yeah, so it was harrowing, and it seemed to go on forever. And I remember looking out the window, walking down the hallways of the hospital when I could get the gumption just to walk down the hallways, and I'd look outside and I'd see some people, just walking down the street, and I would be, God bless them. They have no idea how lucky they are, how blessed they are just to be walking down the side of the street, outside, outdoors, out of this place. And when you're in a cancer wing, it's everybody on that wing has cancer. So you see children, you see grown-ups, you see really sick elderly, a whole mix of everybody. And it's a sad place. It's really, really hard on the soul. And to keep going, stay positive, and keep yourself up. I've had a few times when it got really rough, and my daughter was there, thank God, to help me. But I can remember one time rolling over, and because this ostomy bag is all your intestines, when you don't go to the bathroom, it goes into this bag, and if you mistakenly roll over in your sleep, sometimes the bag would burst, and you got a big mess, and you're all covered in crap, and it's horrendous. And I remember one time me just having a complete hissy fit, just screaming. Luckily the door was closed and they couldn't hear me, but just screaming that I was so sick of all the tubes and all this going on, and mess and everything. And um, cleaned myself up. I didn't want to call in the nurses because I didn't want them to have to deal with that. It was just too disgusting. And later on, my daughter finally showed up, and she could see how upset I was, and she's a lifesaver. She actually put on a tune on her iPhone, the Chubbawamba song, "You get knocked down, you get back up again." And she literally put that on, and she crawls up and just curled up in my lap like my daughter. And that kind of pulled me through that rough time. Yeah, she's my heart. Um, and it just had a lot of ups and downs like that. Every time I went home, at the time I was living on a sailboat because the living was so hard to be on a boat. We ended up having to rent Airbnbs every time I got out for a week or two. And God bless my friends. Some of my friends at different breaks, and that a couple of buddies who were ex-PJs, flew in and spent a week or two with me, just helping me with all the tubes and the feeding tubes, and managing on all that. And in the beginning, it was really, really tough just to walk around. I remember early on when I was still on the boat, I went to take a step off the boat because the boat's off the dock by 3 feet, and you got a little ladder, and I stepped down. I missed the ladder and did a complete flip and landed right on the cement of the walkway. And I laid there for a couple of minutes, and I go, that hurt. But I don't know. I guess I'm okay. So I got up and I hobbled on off there. But after that, we realized that I need to be, in a more stable environment. So we started having to rent Airbnbs every time I got out of the hospital for a week or two at a time. And we did that, and then I just kept going back in the hospital. And of course, we still had the problems with other infections anytime you have a fever, it's huge, huge risk, a huge problem. So I was constantly checking my temperature, and anytime it went up above 100, they want you to rush right back into the hospital. And the few times it got like that, my daughter had to drive me into the hospital, and I was pretty much delirious because you start losing all your sense of things. That makes it really hard. And then you got to go, unfortunately, when you go in an emergency like that, you sit in the emergency room for hours and hours and hours, waiting for them to see you, waiting for them to admit you, waiting for them to put you back into the cancer ward. And every time I had to go back in the hospital on a short notice like that, it's just horrendous to sit in the emergency room. The stuff they have to deal with in the emergency rooms are, they're dealing with everything off the street and everything else. People screaming, going crazy, running up down the hallway. It's a shit show. So I really dreaded any time I had to go in off schedule and not go directly to a room. But I kept going, and the months kept driving on, and kept getting more and more of the chemo done, and losing. Like I said, I lost so much weight, almost 50 pounds of my body weight, and people weren't even recognize me when I did go back to, outside or run into people. They didn't even know who I was. They'd be like, "Hey, can I help you?" And I'm like, "Hey, it's Ken." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Yeah, it's pretty scary. Night of the Walking Dead, I guess. The reason why I got the cancer has been a mystery till I asked and they had no idea. They don't know what causes lymphoma. It could be a multitude of things. There's a million different reasons why you can get it, I guess. Who knows? I mean, it could have been from my military service. I mean, I was in a lot of strange places over in Iraq, Afghanistan. I can remember investigating one of Saddam's chemical weapons sites, and we walked into these buildings, and there was what's this stuff called yellow cake, which is a pre nuclear biological type material. And we saw mountains of it, and then the guy said Geiger counters, and they were going off. And I go, "The guys, we got to get out of here. We can't hang around here." So I mean, we were around and exposed to certain things in the military. You never know. But no, they don't really know where it comes from or any good test of how to find out. So it's tough. It was all lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so, yeah, so questioning what type of cancer it was, trying to figure out how it was, when they first said it wasn't sarcoma, but it's a lymphoma, we're like, oh, what's that, or how's it caused? And they had no idea what caused the lymphoma. But it was a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is what they said. But I remember looking at the scans up on the screen of the computer, and you could see these bright white sites right over. One of them always worried me. They never said anything, but I could have sworn it was right over where my heart is. And then there was where the spleen is, and that was kind of a big white ball of whatever. And then the stomach was down lower, then the intestines over the side. It looked like there was just stuff all over my guts inside. So it was pretty crazy. And for me to be walking around up to the point of going in the hospital and still working and doing, actually going to the gym, working out, even doing certain things like climbing that rope and all that, it just it's such a weird feeling to find out how I was able to keep going with all that stuff, masses and everything else still in my body at the time, without any kind of clear sign that there was something more seriously wrong than what was, until it got so bad I couldn't even function. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It literally is like in your life, and I've always been kind of a healthy guy. I ate healthy. I was into nutrition. Was in the fitness, did all those things. I'm not nobody's perfect. Never was a big partier or anything, and so I always thought I took fairly good care of myself. So when that hit, it's literally like getting hit by a car right out of the, when you just walk across a blind street and that car smashes into you from somewhere, and it changes your whole life. Just everything you thought, was going to happen or go on in your life is changed, and it's all rearranged. And you really don't know, and even till this day, I still don't know. How many people do you hear about? Oh, they had cancer and then they beat it. And then the next year it came back and they're dead. I mean, you hear that all the time. So, I mean, that's something that's always there. I mean, in the back of your mind, I guess. You don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows. I don't ever remember thinking one time to myself that this is it. I'm done. Other than when I first called up the doctor and said, no, I need to come in and see you now, because I don't know if I know something's really, really seriously wrong and it's not good. Did I ever really think that I wasn't going to make it? So I don't know if it's just mental stubbornness or whatever, but yeah, I never dwelled on that part of it. And believe me, I was a walking skeleton and pretty scary looking. Yeah. It's a weird thing. So did I regret doing the chemo? No, because I had no other choices that especially as bad as I got right near the end when I said I got to come in and do something now. Just prior to that, I had gone to a couple of natural paths where we were waiting to get the few weeks to wait to see the doctor. I went to a doctor. I was getting high dose vitamin C. I was doing a bunch of natural things that guys were trying to help me, try different stuff, and nothing was helping or doing it, at least clearly, that I didn't see any sign of it. So by the time I came to the decision to go in the hospital and do the chemo, I didn't have any choice. I had no options left but to try this and do that, because I could tell I was at the end of my rope when that came around. So I think I just went for it after that with the attitude, I just got to survive through this, the iterations of the chemo. And I would ask all the time. I said, with the chemo, they always said it was 6 iterations of chemo. And I would ask them, is there ever a chance any time that somebody would would beat it early and not have to go through all, because I was really, especially near the end there, I was getting sick of going in and getting the chemo. I didn't like it for sure, but the they always said, no, you have to go through the whole 6. You got to do all 6 treatments, blah blah blah. There was never any option on that. And I mean, one of the things that I went through was also the pain, the extreme pain, and you're hurting everywhere. And they got half your guts pulled out, and you're living out of a tube and all that. So they had started me on these medications, and at first they had me on Tylenol and oxycodone, and I said, well, if the oxycodone's taking care of the pain, why do I need the Tylenol? So I asked them to stop the Tylenol, and I just took the oxycodone, and it went all the way up to the point where I had to get 20 milligrams every 4 hours. And at night, there was another med called Dilaudid, which is, I think it's a form of heroin or something like that anyway. But I liked that at night because it got me a little bit loopy and I would be able to fall asleep. I didn't like it during the day because that's the one thing I liked about the oxy. I didn't feel like I was like a stone or any other reason other than it helped the pain. And I would always ask the doctors, because it started going on months and months and months of this stuff that I'm going, well, what's it like? I know eventually I'm going to have to get off these meds. I had trouble with what kind of withdrawal symptoms you have from these kind of meds, and they could never help me. They never said anything. Oh, I don't know. We'll just deal with it when we get there and all that. So it's kind of strange that kind of severe amounts of oxycodone, but yet in the end I had to cure myself of it, because when I finally was done, and the funny thing too is that I did the 5 iterations of the chemo. And that's when the doctor said, I think I was going to die. I think they thought I was going to die. And he said, that's it, you're done. I said, well, I thought I had 6 times of chemo. And he said, no, you're good. And so they let me go home after that. So I only needed 5 iterations of the chemo. And they said, but they did say the scans were showing that it was clear, that there weren't any other masses in my kidneys. And then the last phase was to go back in and have them reconnect my stomach to my tubes, bypass the spleen because it was gone, and then reconnect the intestines and all that, and get rid of, thank God, get rid of the ostomy bag, because I said, I'm not living the rest of my life with a bag like this hanging off my body. I'm just not doing it. But they were able to get rid of that, and that was a big ordeal, a big operation into my guts, and recovering from that was a whole nother ordeal, getting up and just being able to walk again and stuff. It was hell. And some of the weird things I went through in the hospital was, I'm laying there, and literally every 15 minutes, some nurse is coming in to check your blood pressure. Some nurse is coming in to check your blood. Some nurse is going to come in and give you your meds. Another nurse is going to come in and check something else. Or, not only in the beginning did I have a ostomy bag, I had a chest tube, I had a urine bag. They had a tube up my thing. So there was always something they had to do. And it was every 15 minutes. And I'm like, excuse me, but doesn't your body heal when you sleep? I started pushing back on them and saying, look, can you guys come and check my blood pressure and give me the meds at the same time, so that it's an hour before somebody else has to come in rather than every 15 minutes? So that, it took a while, but I was able to get some help on that side. But it's you really need somebody there to advocate for you. If you know somebody, or you're going in the hospital, have somebody come in that's a fighter, and they can push back, and certain things like that. It was totally oblivious to them, because they each have their individual jobs, and it's totally remiss of what the other people are doing. And they don't realize it. You're waking you up every 15 minutes. It's so contrary to healing, to me. I mean, that I thought anyway. And so I was able to push back on that and get some relief. And multiple little wars like that with the canola oil in the food and certain things like that. There was always little battles to be made. And to have somebody like my daughter with me advocating for me was a lifesaver. Every week, a new head of, and just like my doctor was a head that first week I went in, then a new big top cancer doctor would take over the wing the next week. So one of the weeks there was this doc that came through. I asked her, isn't sugar's really bad for cancer, right? And she said to me, which is the strangest thing that just shocked me, was that, oh no, sugar's not a problem, no problem at all. And I was like, everything I've ever heard about cancer, prior to even getting sick or that, and growing up and everything, I always heard sugar feeds cancer and it's super bad for you. So I was such shocked that I couldn't even I couldn't even question it, even ask her another question. Whatever. I was just blown away from the fact that she said, no, it's not a problem. There's no problem with sugar. I was just, wow, that's really weird. Anyway, I didn't bother to ask any other doctors about that afterwards. So very strange.